this was actually one that I recorded last. And I'm like, I have a video talking about there's something wrong with the Fever and how they look defeated, everything. And I still stand by those videos, especially because some of them are reactions at the time, right after the game. So I mean this when I say this. Fire Stephanie White yesterday. Like, fire her yesterday. And the reason why is not that Stephanie White is a bad basketball coach. It's not that Stephanie White is a bad motivational speaker. It's not that Stephanie White has done a bad job defending her players. It's not any of that. It's that Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark fundamentally have different understandings of the sport of basketball.
Oh, you thought the WNBA drama peaked last week? Guess again. Lynn Dunn didn't just speak her mind, she dropped a verbal atomic bomb on Stephanie White, accusing her of treating Caitlin Clark like a glorified ball boy, instead of the absolute offensive wrecking ball she is. And let me tell you, this wasn't subtle shade. Buckle up, because this coaching catastrophe has it all. Passive-aggressive jabs, pure sideline chaos, and a healthy dose of Hoosier fury. Why is Caitlin Clark basically playing on a leash? We're diving deep into this spicy basketball soap opera, and you won't believe the takes.
So I had a film breakdown prepared today, but I'm actually going to go a different direction. This is a rant because we have to talk about the state of this Indiana Fever team, and I'm here to bring the reality to all you Fever fans. This team is not a championship team. They're not a championship team. They're nowhere near close to a championship team because every team that is a championship team can play defense. This Indiana Fever team has no defense, and that's like the farthest of their problems. Their offense looked really bad today, and Caitlin Clark obviously didn't shoot the basketball well, but I'm not going to blame this loss on Caitlin Clark, even though obviously they would have won if she would have shot the ball well.
Lynn Dunn didn't just wake up and choose chaos. She launched a full court press of righteous indignation and unapologetic sideline sass. Because apparently watching Caitlin Clark just jog around the perimeter, looking like she's auditioning for a Peloton ad, while the Indiana Fever's offense resembled a group project where nobody showed up, was the absolute last straw.
To go an entire game where they have not scored more than 20 points, where they have a quarter where they only score 9 points, and to call yourself a professional basketball team is pathetic. To call yourself a professional basketball coach of that team is pathetic. I watched that whole game, and other than Ari McDonald, Aaliyah Boston with a moment here and a moment there, nobody made any type of memorable impact on that game.
And when Lynn Dunn lets loose, it's not some polite high-tea disagreement. Nah, it's more like a lightning strike in a quiet library. Subtlety, gone. Diplomacy, evacuated the building. What we got was a seismic smackdown that instantly blew up every group chat from ESPN analysts to the Fever's own practice facility. All because of a series of head-scratching coaching decisions that made Caitlin Clark look less like the NCAA scoring phenom and more like a glorified decoy in her own highlight reel.
Man, I want to speak on some recent comments that I saw coming across about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, right? And this just speaks to a point that I made earlier about like people. It just shows that like how fickle fans are, right? And so, you know, like the Fever yesterday just lost to they lost to the Aces, right? And their record is 6 wins, 7 losses. Same thing for the Aces. Their record is 6 wins and 7 losses. But for the Fever, you know, you have people who are, you know, who want to already run the coach.
Stephanie White, bless her coaching heart, apparently thought it was a stroke of genius to turn Clark into an honorary traffic cone, while the team's offense stumbled around like it was being called in Morse code. Let's just say the vibes were less than immaculate. Dunn, however, wasn't having it. The moment Clark's legendary handles became mere background noise in a playbook seemingly drawn with invisible ink, Dunn clicked into full-blown executive mic drop mode.
The reason you lost was not because Caitlin Clark didn't score the basketball. The reason you lost is because you stopped doing what was working. What works for the Indiana Fever, especially in that first half, was a pick and roll with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. All you have to do is have a pick and roll at the top of the key. Off that pick and roll, 2 defenders are going to go with Caitlin Clark, leaving Aaliyah Boston to have a wide open lane. That is just the play you should go to every single possession. But how come we never go to it in back-to-back possession? We'll go to it one possession, the next possession we don't go to it. Why not? Stephanie White, why not? It always works. works, two defenders are always going to go with Caitlin Clark. There should never be a play where Caitlin Clark brings the ball off the court and then she passes it and she runs off the playoff ball.
And when a GM unleashes that kind of lava-laced passion, it's not just noise, it's a 5-alarm siren blaring. Fix this mess, or brace for impact. This wasn't just about underutilizing a star. This was a full-blown basketball identity crisis, playing out live in 4K, with popcorn-worthy levels of strategic mismanagement. It's one thing to draft a generational talent, it's another entirely to treat her like a well-paid cheerleader with a decent jumper. Dunn, much like every frustrated fan, seemed to be watching the same circus. Clark constantly passing, defenders barely respecting her, and the coaching staff looking like they were assembling IKEA furniture without the instructions. And while Stephanie White might be aiming for balance or development or whatever buzzword gets printed on the media guide, Lynn Dunn was officially done playing nice. There's no universe where you let the most electrifying rookie in years become an off-ball ghost while your team clanks mid-range bricks like it's 1997. At this rate, Caitlin Clark might need a missing poster. Last seen setting records in college, now lost in Indiana's rotational Bermuda Triangle. Remember, Dunn isn't some passive exec chilling in a high-rise. She's a basketball lifer, a strategist with decades of receipts, and she wasn't about to let her prized rookie become the WNBA's most famous bystander. She practically hit the panic button with her shoe.
What was the game plan against her to kind of slow her down?
Well, like I said pregame, it was just to try to make everything as difficult as possible. Like, you know, Asia's one of the best players in the world. You know, you're not going to stop her. So we just needed to make it difficult. And I thought AB did. But Asia did what great players do. And they step up in the fourth quarter. And that's what she did.
Caitlin's one of the real past few games. What have you said to her? What has she said about keeping that confidence in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is what we have to do as a staff to get her better looks, like higher quality looks. Every game plan is going to be to make her score inside the 3-point line.
So, what was the game plan, you ask? That's the problem. There wasn't one. The Fever looked like they were playing improv theater with a basketball. 1 minute, Clark's sprinting, looking ready to do something electric. The next, she's just chilling in the corner while a teammate launches another contested ISO like it's some twisted team tradition. And you could see it on Clark's face, that simmering, polite Midwestern fury, where the smile gets tighter, the nods get slower, and you just know she's plotting a full-scale basketball revolution in her head. Meanwhile, fans went full Sherlock Holmes, frame-by-frame video breakdowns, conspiracy-level diagrams, arrows pointing in every direction, all wondering if Stephanie White was conducting an experiment to see how many times you could misuse the most gifted shooter in women's basketball before a GM physically combusts. And the irony? Clark didn't even need the ball to expose the chaos. Her off-ball movements practically screamed for help, a beacon in a sea of sloppy passes and defensive breakdowns. While defenders glued themselves to her like glitter at a preschool, the Fever offense wandered aimlessly, like they'd lost their GPS and were too proud to ask for directions.
So yes, the definition of Murphy's Law is anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Now, I'm being kind of dramatic here, but the Indiana Fever are down coach Stephanie White for an indeterminate amount of time. She is out for personal reasons. Stephanie White and her partner, Lisa Salters, who is also a sideline reporter for some NBA games. She is a sideline reporter for the NFL. They were both out at the same time, most recently, like a couple weeks ago. This is completely a personal reason, but there's obviously something that they're dealing with at home. But the adversity that the Indiana Fever have faced this season, I don't know that I've ever seen a team just go down so many key players and key factors to the roster. I mean, I don't know if a coach would be like a key roster member, but
Lynn Dunn. She didn't just notice, she boiled. Watching your franchise cornerstone treated like a floor prop in a low-budget production is enough to make any seasoned executive question reality. She saw shot opportunities evaporate, spacing collapse like a bad souffle, and the offense trudged through molasses while Clark stood ready, wide-eyed, untouched, ignored. Social media, of course, absolutely detonated. Everyone became an overnight coaching guru. Play diagrams flooded timelines. People were resurrecting old NCAA footage like sacred scripture shouting into the void, "Let her cook." Meanwhile, Fever supporters were quietly whispering prayers for an offensive coordinator, or at least a whiteboard not used as a coaster during timeouts. By the time Dunn stepped in, the vibes were so off, they needed a full-blown basketball exorcism. And if airing it out publicly was the way, so be it, because the clock is ticking. You don't draft a generational star just to park her like a bench ornament while your offense plays hot potato with zero heat. It was a basketball mystery so bizarre it could have aired on HBO right after a Mafia documentary. Who muscled Caitlin Clark? Spoiler, it wasn't a rogue defender or some defensive genius from the opposing bench. Nope, the culprit was sitting front and center in the coach's chair, clipboard in hand, drawing up offensive schemes straight from the How to Undermine Your Franchise Star handbook.
Different understandings. What Stephanie White wants to do is not going to work for this team. It is not going to work for this team. What Stephanie White wants to do will not work. And by the way, I'm not saying what Stephanie White wants to do is won't work in general. Won't work in general. Because it has worked. She's had success. But I'm saying what Stephanie White wants to do will not work for this team specifically. And let's take a listen to what Caitlin Clark said. And she essentially exposed that Stephanie White wants him to play slow.
This wasn't just an off night, it was a masterclass in utter confusion. Plays unfolded like improv scenes where nobody knew their lines. Imagine giving Picasso a paintbrush, then duct taping his hands behind his back and telling him to just supervise while interns finger paint. That's precisely what watching Caitlin Clark stand stranded in the corner felt like. Meanwhile, fans across the globe had a collective meltdown that could have powered a small city. Reddit threads multiplied faster than conspiracy theories during a power outage. Memes exploded, analysts, former players, keyboard coaches, everyone threw their 2 cents into the inferno. Was this some avant-garde strategy, or just an Olympic-level fumble of coaching common sense? And then enter Lynn Dunn, channeling the spirit of every frustrated fan who had screamed at their TV in disbelief. This wasn't just a concerned executive peeking in from the sidelines. This was a basketball intervention disguised as a reckoning, a legacy figure finally snapping like a dry erase marker at halftime. She didn't mince words. She didn't try to throw glitter on the issue and hope it shimmered away. No, she lit it up like a fourth quarter comeback with everything on the line. Caitlin Clark isn't on this roster to hand out assists like Halloween candy. She's not a decoy, she's a flamethrower. And keeping that flamethrower holstered while the team struggles to make layups? That's not strategy, that's sabotage.
About the difference we've seen from Caitlin Clark since that Connecticut Sun game. I think she is partly sick, but there are also a lot of other issues going on. She's been a completely different player. And I don't mean just missing the threes. There is no fire there. There's no arguing with the officials. There's no getting the crowd revved up. It seems like she's almost checked out, resigned herself to being less than in order to please a coach that wants to take away Caitlin Clark's strengths. I don't know how else to describe it at this point. As you can see in this picture, I saw this. I want to share this because this just gave me flashbacks to early last season. Now, of course, Christy Sides doesn't have the ego that Stephanie White does, and she recognized what was going on and basically eventually post-break gave Caitlin Clark the keys and said, do your thing. But, does Caitlin Clark look okay? And Steph yelling in her ear, nope, absolutely, she does not look okay.
Suddenly, the silence shattered, the noise swelled, everything shifted. The entire basketball world sat up straighter. The vibe was crystal clear. This wasn't going to get swept under the rug, not with Dunn stomping around like an accountability tornado. She reminded everyone what was truly at stake: wins, respect, and maybe even the future of the entire franchise. So now, with the world watching and the locker room tension thick enough to slice with a Gatorade bottle cap, all eyes are on White. Will she stick to the disastrous script or finally let the superstar cook? This wasn't just about minutes or shot volume. This was about identity, legacy, and systemic mismanagement. Because what we were watching wasn't development, it was denial, like trying to house train a lion. And Clark, she's the lion. Now, let's be fair, coaching a rookie is tough. And coaching a phenom with a target on her back. Borderline impossible. But you know what's worse? Ignoring the generational weapon you have and hoping no one notices she's being used like a decoy in her own highlight reel. And look, Stephanie White has the credentials. She's no slouch. But somewhere between the whiteboard and the actual game, something got completely lost in translation. Maybe she thought easing Clark in slowly would manage expectations. Maybe she wanted to protect her from burnout. Or maybe she just forgot the cardinal rule of coaching. When you have a cannon, you don't use it to roast marshmallows.
I'm sorry, but this is a regular season game. There's no player that's going to be that depressed about a loss. The emotion that she's having right now, that's emotion that you have when you lose a championship. But they didn't lose a championship. So it's only one other thing. It's the coach. I knew something was up, y'all. I played basketball all my life. I played point guard. There was something off about Miss Caitlin when I was watching that Aces game. And I couldn't put my finger on it. It just seemed like Miss Caitlin, she was definitely unmotivated. She looked defeated the whole game. She didn't look like she was having fun. And that is always because of the coach.
The WNBA isn't a charity league. These women play to win, and the Fever have a once-in-a-generation opportunity, one that fans have been absolutely begging for. They didn't pack out arenas to watch Clark pass the ball to players who treat the rim like a haunted object. And the locker room? Tensions are percolating like a mid-season trade rumor. You can practically hear the internal monologues. Why is our best player acting like a decoy while I'm out here launching contested jumpers like it's 2013? Meanwhile, Clark is doing her best political smile while reporters grill her about her non-existent usage, treating it like a national scandal, which at this point, it kind of is. And here's the kicker. Every single person saw this coming. Fans, analysts, that one guy on TikTok who makes WNBA memes from his basement. Everyone knew Caitlin Clark needed freedom, not a leash. But there she was, handcuffed by play calls that looked like they were drawn with a crayon by someone who once saw a basketball game on TV. Then Dunn stepped in like a sitcom anti-hero who'd finally had enough. If sass were currency, she'd be a billionaire. Her message was crystal clear. This is not how you develop a star. This is how you frustrate one into early retirement. The basketball world erupted. Every talking head from cable sports to your cousin's podcast weighed in. The verdict? Stephanie White might want to update her resume. And then, like all great sports dramas, the plot twisted because suddenly whispers started flying. Lineup shakeups, new rotations, a seismic shift in offensive philosophy. It was as if Dunn had walked into a team meeting with a flamethrower and simply said, "Let's try not ruining our future for a change."
All right, Fever fans, it's time to have a very difficult conversation. One that we don't really want to talk about. The question is, what are we going to do about Stephanie White? You know, a lot of you were screaming, get rid of Christy Sides. For Stephanie White, you were happy, you were excited, you were stoked. But I think Stephanie White has a lot to do with this team's failures. Some of you out there, of course, will put this on Caitlin Clark's play in the last couple of games. But I put it on the scheme. I put it on the game plan because a really, really, really good coach looks at its talent. Kelsey Mitchell, Boston, Caitlin, and go, they make a game plan to make that work.
Next game, Clark had the ball more. Not full reign, but enough to make fans collectively exhale a bit. Still, the damage was done. The whole saga became a real-time case study on how not to handle generational talent. And White's coaching credibility? Let's just say it took a hit so big, even the G League felt it. Here's the most ironic part. If White had just done the obvious thing, build the offense around the most electrifying scorer in the league, none of this would have happened. But no, we had to take the scenic route through Bad Decision Valley and make a pit stop at Underdog Fantasy Island before realizing the blindingly obvious. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark, ever classy, still deadly, but you can bet your last jersey she's keeping receipts. Because if anyone's gonna rewrite the playbook on how rookies should be used, it's the woman who turned college basketball into a one-woman show. Lynn Dunn knew it, the fans knew it, even the janitor at Gainbridge Fieldhouse probably knew it. The only one late to the party? Stephanie White, who may now be coaching with the basketball equivalent of a court order to stop overthinking things. And you know it's bad when the highlight reels start looking like lowlights. Every assist Clark makes now comes with a side eye from the crowd, like, yeah, but she could have scored that herself.
I don't care. When we're talking about impact, nobody on that team made impact that game. The coach made no impact. Bonner made no impact. Howard made no impact. Colson made no impact. Mitchell made no impact. Lexi Hull made no impact. Damaris Dantis had her worst game of the season. I'm not out on you, Damaris. It was just the worst game of all season. We got to call a spade here. Aaliyah Boston had a few moments, and Ari McDonald are the only two players that I can sit and I can actually say to you without lying and feeling dirty about myself, saying those two players at least had some type of impact on the game. As for the rest of you, you need to give Kelly Krauskopf back your money.
The Fever front office, watching the online chaos erupt, had two choices: double down on disaster, or finally listen to the woman with a Hall of Fame resume and zero tolerance for strategic malpractice. Thankfully, they chose the latter, and so the new era begins, sort of. We're not at Clark Unleashed levels just yet, but we're inching there. Slowly, like a toddler learning to ride a bike while the crowd chants, "Just let her sprint already." What does the future hold? Probably more drama, more memes, and maybe, just maybe, an offense that actually treats Caitlin Clark like the superstar she is, not an intern fetching the ball for everyone else. Because let's be honest, the WNBA needs her firing on all cylinders. The fans want it, the ratings demand it, and Lynn Dunn, she practically set off a siren just to make sure it happens. So here we are, on the brink of what could either be the greatest rookie breakout story since sliced bread or a cautionary tale about coaching paralysis. But if there's one thing we know for sure, Lynn Dunn does not play when it comes to basketball brilliance being wasted. And if this saga has taught us anything, it's that when a legend speaks, maybe, just maybe, the clipboard crowd should listen before the next time out comes with pitchforks.
And I just think that it's way premature for something like that, right? I said it yesterday on my podcast, and I before the game even started, I said that the Fever needs to continue to develop their chemistry, right? Caitlin Clark missed 4 or 5 games, and so here we are 13 games into the season. They 1 game below 500. And people are ready. Some fans are jumping the ship, or not just jumping the ship. Fans are ready to, they want to fire.
And if you're Stephanie White, well, let's hope she's got a better game plan than Operation Hide the Star, because Clark isn't just here to pass time, she's here to torch the league, preferably with a coaching staff that actually remembers how matches work. And with every possession, every buzzer beater left uncalled, the suspense builds. Will we finally see Clark take over like the hardwood monarch everyone expected, or will more baffling strategic adjustments keep us guessing until postseason probabilities vanish like a half-hearted prayer? Whatever happens next, one thing's for certain: basketball fans have their popcorn ready just in case another rotational mistake ends up trendier than a sneaker drop. Because when you're sitting on dynamite, lighting the fuse isn't optional, it's destiny. Let the fireworks begin.